Welcome to Caribbean Club. We just played a video talking about the ethnicities of the Caribbean. And the ethnicities of the Caribbean, again, are Amerindians who were here first. Then the Africans. The Africans came before the Europeans. African sailors came to the Caribbean before Europeans. You don't read that anywhere. Maybe now, as we start to rethink history and as we start to read and explore history, we are finding and reading the archives, we are finding more information that would suggest that the African sailors came to the Caribbean before Christopher Columbus and before the Europeans. But you notice when you read that and when you listen to the video that we just played about the, when you know that African sailors came here, it means how is this possible? We always were told that Africans were dumb. They never had education. They were foolish, so to speak. They never had religion. Okay, they weren't bright, they weren't smart. But now we're learning that that's not true. Africans sailed here before the Europeans. So it would suggest that Christopher Columbus and Europeans discover the Caribbean. The Africans discovered it before the Europeans. That's quite interesting. What happened to the Africans who came here before the Europeans? No mention is made of that. Why? But when Europeans came here, they quickly claimed the Caribbean for themselves through theft, I would say. But it's quite interesting. So the Amerindians came, the Africans came then. Now, if the African sailors came before, it would mean that the Africans would have met the Amerindians. And when Christopher Columbus and the Europeans finally came to the Caribbean in 1492, the people who they found there, the Amerindians, would not have only been Amerindians if African sailors came to the Caribbean before the Europeans. While the Amerindians were there, it would mean then that Africans were living on the island. Okay. And not only that, the Amerindians if you read history, the Amerindians they were always intermingling, and they were said to be a peaceful set of people, many of them. It would mean that the Amerindians would have, the Amerindians would have intermingled or had some kind of exchange with the African sailors. And we know that when sailors go elsewhere, there is always this meet and greet interloping that takes place. And then when you look at the music, the dance, the culture, the artifacts that exists between the Amerindians and the Africans, some things almost resemble and look alike. So African sailors came. Many of the so when the Europeans came here, there were Africans living on the island, some of whom had met the Amerindians. Sorry, there were Amerindians here, and there were Africans who came before, and there would have been some kind of exchange that happened. Maybe some of them would have formed part of the culture there. And you find that if you read, many people are challenging history and challenging the heritage that would suggest that the Africans, all the Africans who came to the Caribbean came because the Europeans brought them here from Africa. Which is not true, because there were Africans living here before. What happened to them? Anyways, that's quite interesting. Then the Amerindians, the question is, but the video we watched glossed over it and continued with the history that was sold to us. Okay, Christopher Columbus, no mention or no discussion. They only inserted the fact that African sailors came before the Europeans. But that was it. That was it. They don't talk about what could have possibly been the relationship between the Africans and Amerindians. And whether or not the Africans who came, the sailors, whether or not they established a society here, and there and there was some communication and exchange that between the groups. But Africans were sailors. As much as we would think that the Europeans would suggest that the African slaves they brought here, they were dumb, they were unintelligent, they were low class. But that was part of the ethnocentricities that go that is that goes into planning colonialism or colonizing a region or stealing a region and establishing a society in your own eyes. That's quite interesting. The next thing is the Amerindians. The Amerindians. I have a question. When you watch the video that we just played, did they really all die out? Because according to the video, it said that some Amerindians survived. Those who survived, they continue to exist today in Guyana, in Suriname, and in Dominican Republic. But that is not true. If African sailors came to the Caribbean before the Europeans, okay, and established themselves here with the Amerindians who were here, okay, and if there was active travel between Guyana, Suriname, throughout the Caribbean, it would suggest that there were Africans, there were Amerindians would have still survived in other parts of the Caribbean. But the fact that the film glossed over that would suggest that there is some kind of there are some kind of holes, caveats in the presentation. But that is something we're going to be talking about later on, and that's for you guys to consider, maybe for your own research. Okay. Is it did they really all die out? Findings are suggesting no, the Amerindians didn't all die out. And there are some Amerindians who had mixed and intermingled with the Africans. Okay. Many of the Europeans who came called them Amerindians, but some of them, we understand that they were sailors from Africa who came to the Caribbean. Okay. But but those who control culture, who had invaded the Caribbean from Europe, okay, that was not part of their history and the information that they sell to the world. The history that we are left with and the history that we are exposed to is the history that would suggest otherwise. Africans were never here before. Europeans were the first to discover the Caribbean, and they brought the Africans here. But is that true when we're learning otherwise? Okay, we will stop here for now, but this is quite food for thought. Nevia.
Thank you, sir. Very informative. I was just asking if we could have continued with the presentation. I think you told us when the groups are here we'll start.
Are you guys okay? Yes, I just realized that you're all here now. So yes, we will
Yes.
start with the presentation. We will start with Georgia. You wanted to go first, so we'll start with Georgia's group. Okay. So the groups are continuing to present. Last week, we had the two groups, one presenting on Haiti and DR, and another had presented on what was the other island that we presented on last week again? What was it?
Cuba and Puerto Rico, I think.
And Puerto Rico. I like how they did it in Spanish. I found that to be quite novel. That was very good. I was very impressed. I love it. And very good. So now we are going to be hearing from Georgia's group. And you have the floor.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Mr. McKenzie. Let me share my screen 1 second. I just want to check in with my group members to check the temperature. Are we ready, guys? Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are. And by
Right.
the way, please, the group members are the group members on here. Um, Yesterday I saw everybody in the group face, and that was great. And I could match the groups to the faces to the groups and stuff. I would love to see the other group members. When you present, please, would love to see who is presenting.
Well, my internet isn't that great at all, and since I'm sharing my screen as well, I don't want my voice to be choppy, right? So, but I'll ask my other group members if they're okay to share their screen. But since I'm share their cameras, but since I'm sharing the screen, you know, the internet the bandwidth may not last.
All right. Okay, understood.
Thank you so much. But Renee, Melissa, Monique, are you ready? Awesome. Happy to see you, Monique.
Hello?
Renee, Melissa?
I'm here. Are you not hearing me?
We're hearing you know. Awesome stuff, Melissa. Thank you. And
Sir,
Renee,
is it okay when I present, I can turn on my camera?
Yes, please. I would love to see you.
So when I'm
awesome.
presenting, I'll turn on if that's okay.
That's great, man.
Thank you.
Renee, are you here with us?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
No, man, it's me, Georgia.
Oh, yeah, yes, I'm here.
Awesome. All right, guys, let us begin. Are you Team St. Lucia or Grenada? Are you from the Spice Island or are you speaking French Creole? Who knows? But at the end of this presentation, you can decide if you are Team Grenada or Team St. Lucia. Again, guys, I am Georgia Blackwood, and with me are my group members, Renee Richards, Alicia Williams-Tobias, and Monique Francis. Let's go on this journey together. First up, we have St. Lucia. St. Lucia is a picturesque island nation located in the Eastern Caribbean Sea, part of the Lesser Antilles, and known for its stunning nature and beauty. St. Lucia is famed for its dramatic twin peaks, the Pintos, which are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The island boasts lush rainforests, beautiful beaches, and a vibrant coral reef, making it a popular destination for tourists seeking adventure and relaxation. Politically, St. Lucia is primarily a democracy with the Commonwealth realm, recognizing the British monarch as a head of state, representing locally by a governor general. The island's economy is primarily driven by tourism, which significantly contributes to the GDP and employment. Agriculture, especially banana cultivation and growing offshore banking sector, also plays a vital role in the economy of St. Lucia. I'll hand over to one of my group members to take on this section.
History of St. Lucia. St. Lucia, originally known as Lu by Arawak Indians, was assimilated by Carib Indians in 800 AD. Despite attempts by European settlers to control the island, the Caribs remained loyal and fought against colonialism. Sorry. Next slide. According to Saint Hilaire, due to its colonial history, St. Lucia is an amalgamation of African, French, and British cultural elements. The French were the first European colonial power to successfully establish permanent settlement on the island, instituting a plantation-based economy. Most St. Lucians today are descendants of enslaved Africans brought to the island by the French from neighboring Martinique beginning in the mid-17th century. The present name is derived from Sante Aluze, said to have been first given by French seamen shipwrecked on the island in 1502, and Santa Lucia, given by the Spanish explorers later in 1511. The French colonized St. Lucia in 1650 and settled there in 1651. The English attempted to take over in 1659 but were defeated. The French and British fought for 150 years, changing hands 14 times. The island became known as the Helen of the West Indies. The French surrendered in
The French surrendered in 1814. And with that, you'll be walking around St. Lucia and hearing, Je parle français. Do you speak French? Yes or no? But more about St. Lucia. Culturally, St. Lucia has a rich heritage influenced by Africans, French, and British traditions, reflected in its language, cuisine, music, and festivals. The majority of the population practices Christianity, with Roman Catholicism being the dominant denomination alongside various Protestant groups. Traditional folk practices and African-derived spiritual beliefs are also a part of the island's cultural fabric. St. Lucia's welcoming people, diverse culture, and breathtaking landscape make it a unique and enhancing destination or enchanting destination in the Caribbean. Up next, we have Grenada. Are you Team Spice Island? Grenada, often referred to as the land of spice due to its prolific production of nutmeg and mace, is a beautiful island nation in the southeastern Caribbean Sea, comprising the main island of Grenada and 6 smaller islands. This nation is renowned for its stunning natural landscape, including pristine beaches, lush rainforests, and vibrant coral reefs. The capital city, St. George, is famous for its picturesque harbor and colorful Georgian architecture. Politically, Grenada is a parliamentary democracy and a member of the Commonwealth realm, recognizing the British monarch as head of state, represented by a governor general. The prime minister is the head of government. Grenada's economic derives with significant contributions from tourism, agriculture, manufacturing. The island's spice production, particularly of nutmeg and cinnamon, is a vital aspect. I'll hand over now to one of my other group members, Monique, if you don't mind taking this section.
Good evening, everyone. Continuing. So the indigenous Carib people inhabited, my apologies, I have to be using 2 devices as at one. So there's a feedback.
Yeah, mute the audio on one.
I tried doing so. You're hearing me better now?
You're still gonna get the echo. You have to turn off the sound completely off one device. So if it's the camera,
doing so, but there's a default. There's a issue with my laptop.
It is not that bad, Monique. You can continue.
Okay, thanks. So the indigenous Carib people inhabited Grenada when Christopher Columbus landed on the island in 1498. The French settled Grenada in the 17th century, established sugar estates, and imported large numbers of African slaves. Britain took the island in 1762 and vigorously expanded sugar production. In the 19th century, curacao eventually surpassed sugar as the main export crop. In the 20th century, nutmeg became the leading export. In 1967, Britain gave Grenada autonomy over its internal affairs. Full independence was attained in 1974, making Grenada one of the smallest independent countries in the Western Hemisphere. Next slide, please. So culturally, Grenada is a melting pot of African, European, and Caribbean influences. This diversity is reflected in its music, dance, festivals, and cuisine. The population predominantly practices Christianity, with Roman Catholicism being the largest denomination, followed by various Protestant groups. Additionally, there are small communities practicing other religions, including Hinduism and Islam, along with traditional African spiritual practices. Grenada's rich history, vibrant culture, and stunning natural beauty make it a captivating destination and a unique gem in the Caribbean.
Thank you so much, Monique. And we'll take a demographic in Grenada. St. Lucia had a population of around, forgive me, numbers are not my strong suit, of around 183,600 people, according to the World Bank of 2020. Grenada's population is approximately 113,000 people as well, coming from the World Bank. The current population of Grenada in 2024 is 126,887, a 0.56 increase from 2023. The population of St. Lucia stood at a 180.5 thousand in January 2024. Data shows that St. Lucia's population increased by 576, that is a 0.3% increase between early 2023 and at the start of 2024. Both Grenada and St. Lucia, English is their official language and is widely spoken. French Creole or Patois is also used informally as well. Both countries have a predominantly African descent population. It's also political economic context. Political structure, as I stated before, St. Lucia is primarily a parliamentary democracy within the Commonwealth realm, with the British monarch, that is King Charles III, as the head of state, represented by a Governor General. The Prime Minister, who is the leader of the majority party in Parliament, holds the executive power. As it relates to their economy, St. Lucia's economy relies heavily on tourism, which accounts for a significant proportion of their GDP and employment. Agriculture, particularly banana production, has traditionally been important, though it has declined in recent years. The island also seeks to develop its offshore banking sector. Social issues in St. Lucia that some challenges they face are just like many other countries, that is poverty, crime, and unemployment. The government has been working on various social programs that just address these issues with a focus on education, healthcare, and housing. As you can see, we have a nice little picture here of the island of St. Lucia. The social, political, economic context of Grenada, similar to St. Lucia, they are a part of the Commonwealth with the same political structure as St. Lucia, and a Governor General, which represents the British monarch, and the Prime Minister is the head of government. Grenada's economy is diversified with tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing being key sectors. Nutmeg and maize are major agricultural exports, earning Grenada the nickname Island of Spice or the Spice Island. The island is also investing in infrastructure and energy projects to boost economic growth. For social issues, Grenada deals with issues such as poverty, limited job opportunities, and the impact of natural disasters. The government focuses on social welfare programs and economic diversification to improve living standards and resilience. Some mention of the religious spiritual practices, Christianity, for St. Lucia, the majority of them are Christians, with Roman Catholicism being the predominant denomination, followed by Protestant groups, Seventh-day Adventists, Pentecostals, and Baptists, for example. Other faiths there are smaller communities of Rastafarianism, Hindus, and Muslims. The island also has followers of traditional African religions and syncretic practices combining African spiritual elements with Christianity. Folk traditions and superstitions influenced by African, European, and Caribbean cultures play a role in daily life. Practices such as opia, a form of folk magic or sorcery, for, for those who don't know, are part of the cultural landscape. I'm going to ask Renee to take the next slide.
Hi, good night, everyone.
Oh, sorry about that, Melissa. Go ahead. Yes.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay, so we're still looking at the religious spiritual practices. Christianity is similar. Sorry, I'm just removing this from my screen. So Christianity is similar to St. Lucia. It is dominant religion in Grenada, with Roman Catholic making up a significant portion of the population. There are also many Protestant denominations, including Anglican, Methodist, Seventh-day Adventist, and Pentecostal churches. Although we know that across the world, the Roman Catholic Church was first dominant before any other church has been in existence. There are other faiths as well within smaller communities such as the Rastafarian, Hinduism, and Muslim exist in Grenada, just as these exist in Jamaica as well. We may find a few Muslim in Jamaica, but Rastafarian we find a lot in Jamaica as well. So also the traditional African religious practices and syncretic beliefs are also present in Grenada. Spiritual practices. Grenada has a rich heritage of folkloric and spiritual practices, include the use of herbal medicine, spiritual healing, and practice like Obe, just the same as St. Lucia. These are traditional and often interwoven with Christian beliefs. Next slide. So we're going to look at the major, I'm going to look at just a part of the major thinkers of St. Lucia. So the major thinkers, these are persons that contribute to the culture of St. Lucia. So we're looking at Mr. Derek Walcott. And Mr. Derek Walcott, as you see, is a major poet, he's a novelist. And also his work exploring the Caribbean culture. He identified a post-colonial theme. Walcott was also educated in the St. Mary College in St. Lucia and at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. So he began writing poetry at an early age, taught at school in St. Lucia and Grenada, and contribute articles. So he did articles as well, articles and review to periodicals in Trinidad and Jamaica. Production of his play began in St. Lucia in 1950, and he studied theater in New York City in 1958. He lived in thereafter in Trinidad and the United States, but his poetry actually developed from in St. Lucia. Next slide. Another major thinker is our excellent dame Calapo Parletta Lewis, which was born in southern village of Labor, St. Lucia in 1946. She received her early education at the Lobbery Girls Primary School, from which she proceeded on a juvenile scholarship to St. Joseph Convent Secondary School in January 1960. On completing her secondary education, she joined the staff of St. Joseph Convention in September 1965. She began her university education in October 1966, having obtained a scholarship from the Canadian International Development Agency to read for a bachelor degree in English and French at the University of the West Indies at Cape Hill in Barbados. And imagine, back in those days, many of our parents, they weren't even so educated to go to university. So she actually had the privilege that many of our parents didn't even have. Look at it, in 1960, some of our parents said that they couldn't even read or they have half a book. But she was privileged. She was awarded another scholarship under the Canadian Commonwealth Scholarship and Fellowship Plan to read for a master's degree in linguistics at Laval University in Quebec City in 1991. She took up the study at the University of Bristol in the United Kingdom, where she read for a doctorate in education. Her doctoral study focused on the management and provision of tertiary education in small estates. In 1999, the University of Bristol bestowed on her the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws. The University of Sheffield and the University of the West Indies has also conferred on her the honorary degree of Doctor of Law. You could go ahead. John Parletta Lewis presents St. Lucia internationally with grace and distinction during her tenure as Governor General. So she served from the period from 1997 to 2017 as the Governor General. She served as a ceremonial head of state and carried out official duties to enhance St. Lucia diplomatic relations and present on the global stage. So she'd actually be global, sometime maybe in Jamaica, anywhere else in the Caribbean, Trinidad. Throughout her career, Parletta Lucy advocate for women's rights and empowerment in St. Lucia. So she's always looking out for the woman that women have equal rights. She supports initiatives aimed at improving gender equality, access to education, and opportunities for women in leadership roles. So she makes sure that women are always fairly treated. Her advocacy contributes to the advancement of women issues and presentation in St. Lucia society, philanthropy, and community service. Louise has been actively involved in philanthropy and community service initiative. She has supported charitable organization and it focuses on education, healthcare, and social welfare, demonstrating her commitment to improving the quality of life for all St. Lucians. Louise's contribution have had a profound impact on St. Lucia development in education, culture, diplomacy, and social issues. Her legacy as a leader and advocate continue to inspire generation in St. Lucia and beyond. One of my fellow co-workers would actually go ahead and continue. My fellow classmate will continue.
Thank you. And another major thinker we have here from St. Lucia is Mr. Arthur Lewis, who was born in St. Lucia on January 23, 1915. His parents were both school teachers and had migrated there from Antigua about a dozen years before. The islands were dissimilar in religion and culture, so their family, had some slight characteristics of immigrant minorities. Sir Lewis won a Nobel Prize in 1979 for pioneering research on economic development in emerging countries. A professor emeritus of political economy at Princeton, he died in his sleep at his home in Barbados. He published a book, The Theory of Economic Growth, in 1954 that is regarded as a seminal study in the field. Sir Arthur Lewis, educated at the University of London, won a Nobel Prize with Theodore Schultz. He joined Princeton faculty in 1963 and retired 20 years later. At Princeton Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs, he taught an undergrad and graduate courses in economic development and modern economic history. In 1963, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. Some major thinkers from Grenada. I'm going to ask Monique to take on this one.
Sir Eric Sir Eric Matthew Gary, was born in the parish of St. Andrew on 18th of February 1922 to Douglas and Theresa Gary. He was educated at St. Mary's RC School in Lafayette and St. Andrew's RC School in Grenville. He attended the Lafayette School and then the St. Andrew's Roman Catholic Senior School. He was also an acolyte at St. Andrew's Roman Catholic Church, next door to the school. He became primary student teacher in Lafayette School from January 1939 to September 1941. Upon leaving school, he was employed as a primary school teacher for 3 years before migrating to Trinidad, where he worked at the American Naval Base at Chaguaramas. Excuse me if I don't pronounce that correctly. During World War II. He then moved to Aruba, where he worked at an oil refinery before returning to Grenada in 1949. Popularly known as Uncle, in 1951, he had become a working class hero when he successfully organized an island-wide strike, throwing the country into civil strife called a Grenada Manual and Mental Workers Trade Union, which he formed. This placed him firmly in the leadership of labor in the island, and in 1951 he contested the first general election under the banner of the Grenada United Labour Party, which he also founded, and captured 5 of the then 8 seats in the legislation. So Sir Paul Spoon made significant contribution to Grenada, particularly during critical periods in its history. Here are some of his notable contributions. So Sir Spoon played a pivotal role during the tumultuous period of the Grenadian Revolution in the late 1970s. As Governor General, he provided a stabilizing influence and worked to maintain constitutional order amid political unrest. In October 1983, Sir Spoon played a crucial role during the US-led intervention in Grenada, which aimed to restore stability following internal political strife and concerns over the influence of Marxist elements within the government. Throughout his tenure as Governor General in 1978 to 1992, Sir Spoon advocated the democratic principles and the rule of law. He upheld constitutional norms and supported efforts to strengthen democratic institutions in Grenada. So Sir Spoon represented Grenada internationally with dignity and diplomacy.
Hold on a sec. I have to hold on a second. Is it Monique? I know. I sorry I had to interject. I don't usually like to interject, but I had to interject here. Um, I heard you said that Sir Paul School played a crucial during the U.S.-led intervention in Grenada. The U.S.-led intervention. Was it an intervention?
I can hardly
Was
hear
it
you,
an,
sir.
you said that you said that Sir Paul School played a crucial role during the U.S.-led intervention.
In
Was it
Grenada.
was it an intervention or was it an invasion? One, two. The second question is, I mean, was it an invasion
Sir,
or an intervention?
it's intervention, sir.
Well, I'm being very particular when I ask the question.
It was
Depends on,
not an invasion, sir.
all right, it depends on who
It
you're
is
reading.
based on the constitutional order amidst the political unrest, sir.
Well, it depends on who you're reading because please remember that in 1983 or 1982 they killed
Sir, we're
Maurice Bishop.
barely hearing you.
They killed in 1982-83. They killed Maurice Bishop. He
Yes,
was the
sir.
leader of the People's Revolutionary Party. They were
Yes,
fighting for
sir.
independence. And of course, not only that, part of the problem is that these people in the Caribbean, we were sandwiched by people by the US and Russia, or Marxist and capitalist elements. We're not Marxists and we're not capitalists. Yes, we Rasta. There was always, say for example, what happened last week or week before last. Russia was in Cuban water. Russia and China represents Marxism. In this class, we're not having a discussion. Listen to how, if you read this, you could tell that the influence of European influence on this particular reading or capitalist influence. You said earlier, Sir Paul Schoon played a crucial role in the US-led intervention in Grenada, which was aimed at what? To restore stability. Here comes the US playing Jesus. Okay? Here comes the external imposing on the internal and justifying their imposition, calling it a restoration of stability, following internal political strife, which was strategic. Okay? Because, of course, there was fight for independence in control their own country, their own affairs. Okay, and here comes Maurice Bishop, who represented that kind of independence, that kind of nationalism. Okay, but if you read The Caribbean Reader by Brian Meeks and Norman and Gervin, he talks about, and we're going to read it next week. He gave a picture. He opens the preface of that book talking about the CIA and their intervention in the Grenada, okay, and last week we talked about Monday we talked about elites or social class or classes and how some groups stand to gain at the expense of other, which was part of the strategy of creating instability so that they can move in and take over or impose their own brand of government. Okay, the U.S. led. So if you read this, it's clearly biased towards a particular kind of government, a particular kind of politics, one that favors Western style political system and calling Marxist system. So because Grenada had Marxism, it was unstable.
Right. Thank you so much, sir.
This particular reading would suggest that. Furthermore, it says to restore stability following internal political strife and concern over the influence of Marxist elements. There was also concern over the CIA and ultra-capitalist interference as well. It was also that in Jamaica between JLP and PNP. It was the same thing between Marxist and democratic in political ideologies influenced by those of the East, those of the West, those external to Jamaica, external to Grenada, utilizing the local populace as a way to create instability, so that which was the strategy. Okay. And by the way, if you mention Sir Paul Schoon and 1983, you have to mention Maurice Bishop. Maurice Bishop is a very significant figure in Grenada. Okay. But anyways, continue.
Thank you so much, Mr. McKenzie. I'll take on from here.
Okay.
Right, but just to clear up, what we really want trying to do is remove the high tension words. Right, so we do agree that possibly intervention is probably too soft of a term, right? And possibly invasion should have been used, right? But nonetheless, it's an argument of semantics and not necessarily an argument on what is actually being depicted here. Yes, Sir Schoon rather, right, would have been acknowledged for his thinking, right, and his own ideologies as an individual, making him a thinker in Grenada, recognized by the Grenadian people, right? And I understand what is being said additionally, Mr. McKenzie, that we have influences, but history is oftentimes written from those who from those who prevail, right? And I accept the point as well that, you know, from various circumstances, from whomever it may have been written from, may want to use the word intervention over invasion. But nonetheless,
that is why we do critical thinking. Because notice, I love what you said. Very good debate, very good conversation. History is written from the point of view of those who prevail. But history is continuous. Life is continuous. Yes. We said that Immanuel Kant says history is a result of the varieties of human natures and circumstances. And there are those who impose, we talk about Michel Foucault and how knowledge institution serves to preserve a particular knowledge. So we talk about those who prevail. But guess what? We have independence now. Yes? Grenada is an independent country, and we're Caribbean people revisiting, doing critical thinking in post-colonial theory, looking at what is written about us and what is said. And so therefore, and I said to you, the post-colonial must be a skeptic. Okay. So I know you said it's semantic, but I said language is important. Say, for example, we no longer use third world. We say global south, because third world suggests second to others. Yes, but now we are changing that. So the word US-led intervention, and we are coming from the subaltern. Thank you. Now so to use the word, I know you say semantic, but if you read that whole paragraph, and that's why I say when you read, you have to read critically. You have to look, what are they really saying? If you read this whole paragraph, you could tell that it is biased, okay, towards those who had won, the colonialist, and those who want to preserve a particular narrative and continue their domination. But we in this class, okay, who are now revisiting history, we will not make the same mistake. We will put things into perspective. Christopher Columbus did not discover Jamaica. Okay, it was, he only opened it to the other Europeans, but there were Africans here from other parts of the world. There were Africans in Jamaica, so they discovered Jamaica, the Caribbean, before the Europeans. Okay, outside of the Amerindians who were there. And of course, before the Africans came, the Amerindians were already here. So language is important, but when you read history, it would suggest that Christopher Columbus is solely responsible, okay, for the discovery or of the character. So you know, you can already, when you read that, why is history written like that? So you know, to preserve a particular philosophy and to continue a particular identity. Yes.
Thank you.
No, but this is good though. This is good. I'm happy that you shared this. I'm happy that you brought this and you're sharing. It provides an opportunity for you to delve into it and look at it. And by the way, I'm not saying you are wrong. Okay. I'm not saying you're wrong or you're right or anything. I'm just pointing out something here as it relates to history and narratives. And that as post-colonial skeptics within the subaltern, when we look at history, we critically look at history. Yes? Continue.
Thank you so much. Sir Schoon represented Grenada internationally with dignity and diplomacy. His tenure as Governor General coincided with a period of increasing global awareness and engagement for Grenada, particularly in the Caribbean and the Commonwealth context. After retiring from public office, Sir Paul Schoon authored several books and memoirs that provided valuable insight into Grenada's history, politics, and his own experiences. His writings contributed to the understanding of Grenada's development and its place in the Caribbean region. Sir Paul Schoon made significant contributions to Grenada, particularly during critical periods in history. Here are some of his notable contributions. Sir Paul Schoon played a pivotal role in determining the tumultuous period in Grenada's revolution in the late 1970s. As Governor General, he provided a stabilizing influence and destabilizing, depending on whom, thank you, Mr. McKenzie, and worked to maintaining constitutional order amidst political unrest.
Oh yeah, he provided stabilizing influence for the
Thank you.
capitalists.
Another major thinking, major thinker.
Yes, continue.
In October 1983, Paul Schoon played a crucial role during the US-led intervention or invasion in Grenada, which aimed at, oh, read this part already. We're just going to skip over this slide. Yes. Oh, and that is the end of the presentation. So at the beginning,
to restore Western style. Go back to the last slide. Back to the last slide. The last slide before the reference. And I'm so happy I'm happy you presented and what you are saying. So now it forces me to know when I speak with you next week, Monday, to share from Norman Gervin's and Brian Meek's book, the Caribbean Reader. Well, it's a book with several essays. Okay, various people contributed to various chapters, but in the preface and in the introduction and so on, they talk about October 1983. But who wrote that book? Who wrote the Caribbean Reader? Caribbean people. Okay, and they talk about Grenada, and they don't talk about Paul Schoon per se. They talk about, see, it depends on who you're reading and what you're reading. Okay, you could tell that the presentation and the information that you get, the thinker that you provided was a thinker that represented not Marxist ideology, but capitalist ideology from the Western world. And when you read Caribbean Reader, they talk about the CIA and the invasion of the CIA. If you go, I've been to Grenada before. I've lived in Grenada. I've been to Grenada before. And in fact, many of the locals talk about that 1983. Maurice Bishop is seen as a hero. They talk about that the instability and the role that the US played. But this particular reading that you presented, they make it so nice. Okay. And not only that, went as far as to say he was the reason, he restored stability. What? Okay. There is stability and there is stability. He restored stability. The stability, because you know why? Because they got rid of the Marxist elements. They got rid of Marxist elements, so now the country's stable. Say, okay, if Fidel Castro had lost, of course, they'll be talking. Cuba would celebrate Batista, who represented and was supported by the US. Then you go to Guyana and you look at Walter Rodney, and he was assassinated in 1983, I think, or 1982, something of the sort. Okay, because he represents nationalist, Marxist ideology against, and he was fighting for nationalism and Guyanese democracy, kind of independence and freedom, free from American and British and European penetration and interference. While whoever was, and I won't take away from you guys, the group is about to present, whoever was the leader in the 1980s, okay, was supported by the US, okay, and represented their interest. But he was He was leading Guyana with an iron hand, and he was seen as a dictator, but he was supported by the US because he protected US interests. Now, I'm an American citizen, but I am doing history, okay? And I'm being fair to history, and I'm providing with you. Okay, you might say, oh, why are you talking? No, I am, as a professor, I have to facilitate a particular perspective, and I'm also a post-colonial skeptic who is a black man, okay, who have done deep research. So I'm going to be fair to history, okay? The US has intervened, but not intervened. We talk about structural adjustment part. Why is the Caribbean the way it is? Or because of structural adjustment policy, the process of intervention to help to steer Jamaica, the Caribbean, towards a level of economic development. Well, guess what? That's not what it did. If you read Ramesh Wansawan, he taught from Trinidad and Tobago. Ramesh Wansawan, in his book, The Challenge of Structural Adjustment in the Commonwealth. Structural adjustment was supposed to be an economic policy, as an intervention policy to help improve and aid Caribbean, but guess what? It did the opposite. It was a strategy. Structural adjustment issue, according to Ramesh Ramsawan, is not surprisingly one surrounded by intense controversy and emotion. This is because structural adjustment does not concern itself with economic policies or improving government performance, but it brings into question basic economic philosophy and ideology, and may also involve the effective transfer of decision making from local hands to external or international hands. That structural adjustment was supposed to be an intervention. But guess what? What it did, it broke down barriers and promoted foreign penetration and destroyed Caribbean agriculture, destroyed some of our economic systems, and made us into dependent capitalist nations. Yeah, as I said to you, we are critical thinkers in Caribbean, and we're doing post-colonialism. So yeah, but let me tell you, you guys did an exceptional job with the presentation. I love it, but I am so happy that you presented the way you presented. Okay, I would probably ask, okay, so maybe you guys are also capitalist. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
There we go. There we go. We may never know, right? Because
Oh,
history.
okay, well, but this is good. And listen, I embrace all ideas. I mean, I don't look, if that's your perspective, that's fine. But it's also good to present another perspective about Maurice Bishop and where does he play a role in this. Say, for example, if you read, you talk about Edward Siaga and Michael Mann, the same thing. The book, the Social Origins of Democratic Socialism in Jamaica, written by Nelson Keith and Novella Keith. It's called The Social Origins of Democratic Socialism in Jamaica. And in that book, they talk about Michael Manley. It's as if they're making love with him. Okay? All right. But because we know that, we are critical thinkers. Or I said to people, I'm not PNP or JLP. I'm not Democrat or Republican. Okay. If Democrats do something good, I'm talk about it. If the Republicans do something good, I'll talk about it. Okay. If they do something bad, I'm gonna raise the red flag. Okay. I will not be enticed by a group which prevents me from making an honest determination about stuff. But this is good. Now I want to point out one thing to this group. When I ask you for the demographics, what's the demographics of Grenada? Not the demography. The demographics. Demography is defined as the study of something, the study of human population and the changes in their quantity associated with migration or fertility and mortality. But now, if I ask you for the demographics, now there's a difference between demography or demography and demographics. Now, demographic analysis of something includes the statistical analysis of population. Okay, this changes in the structure of the population, the ethnicity, this changes in the racial makeup. Yes.
So then what did you ask us for?
What's the demographics of Grenada? Not necessarily demographics. What's it do a demographic analysis showing the racial makeup or the changes in the racial makeup?
You gone very
and so
low,
on. But
sir.
you guys were okay. You guys were fine. But I'm really talking about the structure of the population, or the racial makeup or the ethnicity, and
The
so on and
structure,
so forth.
oh, the ethnicity. Okay.
Okay, the ethnicity, the racial makeup, and probably how it changes over time. However, that's fine. That's fine. You guys are okay. All right. You guys still alluded to that, but also went as far as to talk about population side and so on and so forth, which that's good. Okay, you will still get a full mark for that. But I just want to point out the difference for your own learning and education. There's a difference between demography and demographics. Okay. One, two. By the way, the word is acolyte. As some of you are struggling, not just your group, but other groups are struggling with Catholicism. The word is not Catholic. All right. I know if we're speaking in our Jamaican parlance with other people, that's fine. Catholic is fine. But the actual word is not Catholic, but Catholic. Or if you say Roman Catholicism, it's Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, not Catholicism. It's not Catholicism, Catholicism, 5 syllables. Catholicism. I'm doing this so that you can represent yourself. If ever you want to go international and speak, you don't make the same mistake. So it's Roman Catholicism. It's a legislature, not legislation, or it's the legislature, okay, and coincided, all right, coincided. So legislature, Catholicism, and acolyte. But I noticed that word came up several times, especially Catholicism, and I think several students have problem pronouncing the word. But let me tell you, I'm going to give you a secret to not mess up the word. Slow down, okay? And when I came to the US, people would say, you speak so fast, we don't know a word you were saying. And eventually I learned to slow down. Okay, so when you do a presentation to a large group, especially when you meet upon very word that they're unfamiliar with, it's what you can do is slow down, and then you proceed. But very good presentation, very, very good. Another A+ presentation, okay? So we go to the next group.
Good night, everyone. We are the group that's presenting on Guyana and Martinique.
All right, ready to go. As soon as you start, may I just be excused, as Murphy's Law would have it, the internet went down. They're sending a technician out, so I am on my phone. Kenyatta will project the presentation, and I'll kick it off. But just excuse me from not being on video.
Really understand. And as soon as this group presents, we will end class. Next week we'll take questions and presentations. I'll share about the other islands, and I'll give you a trace of the Caribbean island. Okay, go ahead.
All right, awesome. All right, so good evening, everyone. So I want you to think.
Good evening.
I worked with the Jamaica Tourist Board for about 9 years. And oftentimes when we look at countries or islands or republics, we look at them from the touristy lens. However, that's just a small piece of what obtains. And it isn't really the vein of a country. So this evening, my colleagues and I will be looking at a people, their struggle, their politics, and their culture. We will take you on a journey through the Caribbean islands of Martinique and Guyana. These two regions, though part of the same geographical area, they offer unique insights into the Caribbean experience. So in this group, Jelaine, Kenyatta, Kemery, and Nivea, and myself will just walk with you through these two islands. I'll give you an update on the brief history. Then Kemery will speak to you about the current position, what obtains now. Kenyatta will look at the demography. Kemery will go back to religion, and then Nivea will talk about the key figures. So let's look at the brief history. Firstly, Guyana is located on the northern coast of South America, and it is bordering Venezuela. And that will come into play later about a big problem they're having with Venezuela now. If we look at a chronological order of Guyana's history, and as time permits, because we have 15 minutes, so we'll just take you through a chronological order. So for the pre-colonial era, the first inhabitants of Guyana entered the islands during the first millennium BCE. And amongst the earliest settlers were the group, the Arawaks, the Carib, and they said possibly the Wario. Then there was Christopher Columbus, who thought he discovered something, right? But he was an explorer, and he came and he saw people in Guyana. So he sighted Guyana's coast in 1498. However, it was the Dutch who finally began the European settlement, establishing trading posts upriver about 1580, and by the mid-17th century, the Dutch had started importing slaves from West Africa to cultivate the sugarcane. So they started enslaving our people from that time to come and help them to do some work. Then came the British rule. And Guyana really changed hands frequently. When we studied this, we really saw that there was a flip-flop in there. And during the French Revolutionary and the Napoleonic Wars, in 1792 to 1815, the British took over. And in 1796, and remained in position, except for some short intervals they had until 1814, when they purchased Demerara, Berbice, and Essequibo, which in 1831 were united as a colony, British Guyana. Next slide, Kenyatta. All right, so after that, we can group the other part as the abolition of slavery, or the indentured labor. Because after the abolition of slavery in 1838, Black freedmen left the plantations to establish their settlements along the coastal plain of the island. And then the planters imported labor from several sources, the most productive of whom were the indentured workers. They were from India. Then came the independence. Guyana achieved independence from UK in May 26, 1966. And following independence, Forbes Burnham rose to power, quickly becoming an authoritarian leader. And I want you to remember that. So there wasn't democracy, there was authoritarian leadership. Pledging to
Very important. Very important. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Pledging to bring socialism to Guyana. And after his unexpected death in 1985, power was peacefully transferred to Desmond Hoy, who implemented some democratic reforms before being voted out in 1992. But today, Guyana is a sovereign state and is the only English-speaking country in South America. Its history continues to shape its culture, its society, and its identity. I'll invite Camarino to give you a little bit more on what obtains today in Guyana.
Good night, everyone. All right, so looking at Guyana current position. So the South American nation now heavily depend on oil profits, and Georgetown cannot afford these so-called plans. Guyana was seen as one of the poorest country in South America in the first decades of the 21st century. However, the Guyana economic story has undergone a dramatic shift. Traditionally, agriculture, which is rice and sugar, and mining, which is gold, were their mainstay. So that was where they get their resources from. However, the discovery of a vast offshore oil reserve in 2015 completely transformed the nation development trajectory. They had become one of the fastest growing oil producing countries. Guyana reportedly produced around 650,000 barrels of oil per day. So this newfound wealth fuel explosive economic growth with Guyana GDP, which is the gross domestic production, which is gross domestic product, which is a measure of the total value of goods and service produced within a country border for a given time or period. We see where this new development has caused Guyana to experience a staggering 44% increase in 2020 and a phenomenal 62% leap in 2022. To ensure responsible management of this oil wealth, Guyana established the National Resource Fund, a sovereign fund wealth. Also in January of this year, Guyana said it's expected to receive some 2.1 billion in oil exports and 320 million from royalties in this year. So big money.
Okay, stop.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry,
sir.
go ahead. Go ahead. This is I thought you were already reading down this section about big money. When you finish reading about big money, I have to make a point because I'm telling you, I am upset.
Okay,
I
sir.
I am upset. What is going on in the Caribbean? But continue reading. Continue reading.
All right, sir. So big money is tied to Guyana oil reserve, and they took ExxonMobil, an oil company in the United States, to court because they inflated the value of oil well equipment over 200 times to over. So Exxon claims it's a mistake, but the implications are great. This would have a significant impact on the oil profits, and Guyana has a production sharing points with the Exxon, with government only receiving its share after reduced costs. So they will have only gotten 12.5%. Also, there are some social issues such as poverty, infrastructure development, education, and healthcare that remain of pressing concern. The government faced the challenges of using new oil revenues to add these long-standing issues effectively. So despite the big money or the change in Guyana's economy, they're still having some issues to resolve these outstanding challenges that they're facing.
Listen, man, listen, I love when you guys come with new information I don't know. You just read something I don't know about. I didn't know this part. Last year, I wrote an article when we discovered that Guyana had found oil. They always had oil, but recently they found new oil reserves in Guyana. They found new oil reserves in Guyana. Okay? So, and a lot of political commentators, economic commentators, I was one of them. I wrote an article. I said, people were saying, oh, great. This is good for the Caribbean. Jamaica and other Caribbean islands they were inviting other Caribbean islands to invest in Guyana's oil. There were a lot of the CARICOM and was saying that, oh, this is great for CARICOM. This is great for Guyana. Guyana, just so you know, is one of the poorest countries in the Caribbean and in the Western Hemisphere, despite the fact that they have oil. Okay? Despite the fact that they have oil. Jamaica had bauxite in 1950, 1952? 57? I mean, Alpa and many of the bauxite companies are owned by who? Or who makes most of the money from bauxite? Guyana has oil. I wrote an article and I said in the article, is Guyana's oil the Caribbean hope for real prosperity, competitive advantage, and development is? And I also, somebody had wrote an article and I commented on that article. The article is in the Gleaner. But I said, it's Guyana's oil. Does that provide any hope? And I said in the article, I was very skeptical. And I said, I doubt that because we've had opportunities in the Caribbean and we've squandered it. or we're not strategic, or we allow external or outside influences, or we have not learned to come together as a Caribbean country, as Caribbean peoples and nations, to invest and to help to. Okay, let me tell you what Caribbean lack: capital. And I said to my coworkers yesterday, we were having a meeting at the Cheesecake Factory, and I said to somebody, I love bowling. And I said to them, you know why I love bowling? And I love going to the amusement park. Because when I was growing up in Jamaica, I never had a chance to go bowling. And I never had a chance to do the amusement park. I had it probably when I was 6 or 7, and after that it disappeared. Then I think one time they developed bowling in Portmore Mall, and they started it, but it never finished. And the next thing you know, they're gone. Okay, but we never had bowling. So I said to my friends, my coworkers, at the meeting we were having, we were just liming. I said, I that's why I love bowling here. You said let's just go bowling. Bowling is one of the favorite things that I like to do in this country, and the amusement park. And I said, why? Because we never had bowling in Jamaica. He said, you don't have bowling? I said, no, we don't have bowling alleys. Why? And I said to people, you know what Jamaica like? Capital intensive investment. Those big equipments, industrial equipment. So therefore we cannot, and that's when I said to you, when you look at the stages of development or look at economic development or the production process, you have those who are at the early stage of production, those who are in the middle, and those who are at the finish. The post-industrial country, they're at the end. They make that, okay, they do financing and they do the iPhone is made in another country, but just the parts and stuff, but the intellectual part, the part that stands to gain the most money, they send back the phone and it's completed in the US. Then they sell it back to these, okay? They want to protect the post-industrial country, whichever France, Germany, whatever the places. But I'm sorry for cutting you because I have to make a very important point because I'm upset because I'm learning some stuff now. Listen to this, what you guys are presenting. You're telling me ExxonMobil, which is an American company, okay, makes most of Guyana's money. In fact,
Yep.
You're telling me 12 points of the 100%, all the equipment that Guyana have to use, okay, to excavate the oil and to do all the oil refineries and stuff, they do not have the money, so they have to get external investors to get the capital intensive industrial equipment to be able. But guess what? What they did was to inflate the cost of these equipment so that the 100% of the profit, by the time Guyana only get 12.5% of the money from their oil, and Exxon inflated the cost, okay, of the production. And I'm saying to you, this is what I'm talking about. That is why I'm saying to you, no matter Black people, Caribbean people, we're not supposed to be rich. No matter when you find a way out, that those who already control find a way to make it, and that's why I say the competition is not fair, because those who are already ahead made it so that they stay ahead. Okay? This is absolutely ridiculous. This is what the Caribbean government, Caribbean community, CARICOM, that's what they should be talking about. Creating a Caribbean whereby we can come together and develop capital intensive technology so that we don't have to rely on post-industrial countries and then multinational, okay, to lend us money or to engage in our production and then inflate the cost. I'm telling you, this is ridiculous. I am so sorry. Continue. Continue, if whoever was presenting. But you guys,
Okay, so
yeah, thank you so much. I have to write an article about this.
Guyana has a complex political background because of its colonial history, ethnic diversity, and recent economic developments. So Guyana was a British colony until it gained independence in 1966, as Ariel would have alluded to. This colonial legacy has left a significant impact on its political social structure. So the main political parties they have two parties, just like Jamaica, two main parties. So they have the People Progressive Party, which is PPP, traditionally supported by the Indo-Guyanese, and the People National Congress, PNC, which generally garners support from the Afro-Guyanese. So these parties dominate the political scene and have history of rivalry and conflict, just like Jamaica. Guyana has a parliamentary system and elections have often been contentious. Accusation of electoral fraud and political instability have been common, which is likely in every country. The 2020 election, for example, was particularly disputed, leading to a prolonged period of uncertainty before the PPP's Ifran Al was declared president. In the international relation, Guyana's main relation with both regional and international power, the border disputes with Venezuela over Issa Cuba region remain a significant issue. So Guyana is also a member of the Caribbean community, which is CARICOM, and play an active role in the regional affairs.
Thank you, Kemmery. Kenyatta will now talk about Ghana's demographics.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So, sir, when you started the class, you started speaking about the demography of the Caribbean and as it relates to colonialism and the different ethnic groups scattered across this planet. So, Guyana is one of those countries where you will notice where they have different demographic groups amongst their nation there. And you'll see that coming out in this presentation and as I go along. So Guyana is located on the northern coast of South America and is a country characterized by its diverse population and rich cultural heritage. It is shaped by indigenous communities, colonialism, as we've been discussing, and waves of immigrants. Guyana has a unique demographic profile that reflects its intricate social and historical context. And to understand Guyana, you'll have to look at the demography of Guyana as it involves examining its population size, composition, distribution, and various socioeconomic factors that influence these aspects. So now we're going to be looking at the population composition. And as of 2023, Guyana has an estimated population of 789 million. I'm not really good with numbers. And this is according to World Bank. And World Bank is one of those organizations that we know produces very good and acceptable data. And the country's population is a melting pot of ethnic groups, each contributing to the rich cultural nation. The largest ethnic group in Guyana is R, and these are some of the groups, well, these are the groups that we're listing. The Indo-Guyanese, and this group makes up 40% of the population, and they are descendants of Indian laborers brought to Guyana during the British colonial period to work as sugar plantation workers. They mainly practice Hinduism and Islam and have significantly influenced the culture and economic landscape of Guyana. And this as well is data collected by the intelligence agency in 2023. Then we have the Afro-Guyanese, and this group comprises of approximately 25% of the population. And they are also descendants of African slaves who were brought to work on the plantations. And they are primarily Christians and have a profound impact on the country cultural and political space. And again, these are all information that we got based on recent research and census taken within Guyana. And then we have the Amerindians. And this particular group makes up around 10% of the population. And the Amerindians are indigenous people of Guyana themselves. And they live mostly in the hinterland regions and maintain a distinct cultural heritage with unique language, tradition, and lifestyle. And again, recent information by the Central Intelligence Agency. And sorry, just to also point out that I have a colleague who is a part of this, who belongs to this particular group, the Amerindians. And then you also have the mixed heritage, which also makes up a large portion of the population. And they identify again as being mixed heritage and reflect the intermarriages between the different ethnic groups. So this particular group are trying to find a proper term, but they would have either gotten married or been in different relations with the other groups that were mentioned before, which gave the country this mixed heritage, right? And this group embodies the multicultural nature of Guyana. And the other groups that remain is 1% of the population, and this 1% represent Europeans, Chinese, and Portuguese who were brought to Guyana during the colonial period. And so as you can see here, based on what you had said in the introduction part of the class when we started, when you spoke about the Chinese and how they were brought to the Caribbean, as you can see, this data is
Yes,
actually showing and supporting what you said.
very good. Thanks. It's good to see the faces. Finally, nice to meet you, Kenyatta. Some of the students, I'm finally meeting them. I can now put a face to their voices.
And I'm now handing over to my other colleague to continue with the religion.
All right, so Guyana religion. So Guyana boasts a rich blend of faiths with Christianity, which comprise of Anglican and Catholic, and Hinduism holding a dominant position. Islam has been seen a rise in recent decades, particularly among the South Asian population. So interestingly, some Indian Guyanese community continue to practice traditional indigenous religion, adding another layer of the country's spiritual landscape. Also, where Christianity is concerned, Guyana in 1990, sorry about that. Yes. So in 1990, 50% of Guyanese were Christian, 34% were Indians, and 9% were Muslim. So most of the Christians in total are 65%, which comprise of the Protestants. 35% are Roman Catholics. So the main religion in Guyana, we would say, is Christianity.
Okay, good night, everyone. There were several key figures who contributed not only to Guyana's progress, but the Caribbean as well. So we have decided to highlight, as mentioned earlier, Dr. Walter Rodney, and I will briefly explain why. So Dr. Walter Rodney was born in Georgetown, Guyana on March 23rd, 1942. And he grew up during the country's anti-colonial movement. His father was a Marxist-oriented People's Progressive Party member, which led the struggles for freedom from British rule. So you know he has roots, deep roots in the Afro-Guyanese group. Dr. Walter Rodney was an internationally acclaimed author of 6 scholarly books and numerous academic articles that documented the devastating effects of slavery and colonial imperialism in Africa and in the Caribbean. He extended his critical analysis to explain how those effects contributed to prevent the progress of newly formed neo-colonial governments. So he definitely spoke from the subaltern point of view. Dr. Rodney published his best known work, How Europe underdeveloped Africa. And that was done in 1972. Oxford University also published Dr. Rodney's doctoral thesis, A History of the Upper Guyana Coast from 1545 to the 18th century. Also, in 1975, two chapters titled from the thesis, let me get the pronunciation of this correct. Two chapters from the Guyana Coast and Africa in Europe and the Americas were published in the Cambridge History of Africa. Rodney went on to publish many more books throughout his life. Some more history on Dr. Rodney. He traveled widely and he became known internationally as an activist, as a scholar, and formidable orator. He was able to express exactly what was happening to the Caribbean region through the history that he experienced from his forefathers. So what he did, he taught at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania during 1966 to 1967, and in 1969 to 1974, and in 1968 at his alma mater, University of the West Indies, yours truly, Mona, Jamaica. He was sharply critical of the middle class's role in the post-independence Caribbean. He was also a strong critic of capitalism and argued that only under the banner of socialism and through the leadership of the working class could Africa break from imperialism. On October 15th, 1968, the government of Jamaica, led by Prime Minister Hugh Shearer, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, declared Rodney persona non grata. What does this mean? This was a decision to ban him from ever returning to Jamaica, and his subsequent dismissal by the University of the West Indies Mona campus. This caused protests by the students and the poor of the West Kingston that escalated in many riots known as the Rodney riots. These riots resulted in 6 deaths and causing millions of dollars in damages. The riots, which began on the 16th of October 1968, triggered an increase. Look at what the rebellion triggered. It triggered an increase in the awareness in political awareness across the Caribbean, especially among the Afrocentric Rastafarian sector of Jamaica. And this was documented in Dr. Rodney's book, The Groundings with My Brother. In 1969, Rodney returned to the University of Dar es Salaam. He worked at the university until 1974 when he returned to Guyana. He was promised a professorship at the University of Guyana in Georgetown, but the Forbes-Burnham government at the time rescinded the offer when Rodney arrived in Guyana. Rodney was close to C.L.R. James, renowned author, among others, and supported the socialist government of Julius Nyerere, which, while his academic work contributed to the emergence of decolonization, African social sciences. Rodney also worked to disseminate knowledge in the Tanzanian villages in Africa, where he spoke in Kiswahili, the language of the people. He continued his Pan-African activism and he analyzed the causes of the continent's underdevelopment. And he published his work, How Europe Underdeveloped in Africa, in 1972. His work continues. On June 13th, 1980, Dr. Walter Rodney was assassinated, as you mentioned earlier, sir, in Georgetown, Guyana, at the age of 38 by a bomb explosion in his car. A month later, he returned from celebrations of independence in Zimbabwe, at a time of intense political activism. This was his life's work. It was widely believed, but not proven, that the assassination was set up by Guyana's president, one of his own, Lyndon Forbes Burnham. Rodney believed that the various ethnic groups historically disfranchised by the ruling colonial class should work together, a position that challenged Burnham's hold on power. And it should be noted that Dr. Walter Rodney's work as a Caribbeaner has been deprived of a great mind by and he achieved this at an early age. A special distinction should be given to him of being a permanent part of a unique tradition of intellectual leaders such as of African and people of African descent in the Americas. So his work can stand next to the same order of importance such as people like Marcus Garvey and W.E.B. Du Bois, George Pandmore, and C.L.R. James. So Dr. Rodney contributed significantly to Guyana's progress and to the Caribbean region. Thank you. I hand over to my colleague.
Thank you so much, Nivea. Thank you so much. We now go to the island of Martinique.
Very good. I like how you mention his name with C.L.R. James and Marcus Garvey and George Padmore and W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois actually very a significant person in American civil rights movement. He also taught at the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League college. And he was influenced by Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey really influenced him, and quite sure along with Frantz Fanon and so on. So this is powerful. You see how I said to you, in the Americas, when you study Caribbean thought, you can't divorce it from what's going on in the US. Okay? You can't just talk about Britain and France and Germany. The US also was a colonial power, and they continue to be so. Okay? All right, continue.
All right. So, bienvenue au Martinique. My colleague spoke Spanish. I speak French. So, Martinique, I'm going to give you a brief history. Jelaine will speak to you on the current position and the main religion. Kenyatta will take you again through the demography of Martinique. And I will tie it off with a key figure and a conclusion. So, let's look at the brief history. Martinique is a Caribbean island. And
let me ask you a question, Avril, and your group. It's now 9/11.
Yes.
Do you want to complete your presentation on Monday, or you want to finish it now?
10 minutes and we're done, sir.
All right, continue.
All right. So, Martinique is also an overseas region of France. And what shapes this country, it's its indigenous roots, its colonial past, and this ongoing relationship that they have with France. Martinique was originally inhabited by Arawak and later the Carib people. And it was named Joanaceria Montanino by the Arawaks, which really means island of flowers. And then there comes what they call the European discovery. But as my group and I said, Christopher Columbus didn't discover anything. He encountered Martinique on his fourth voyage in 1502. And at the time when he encountered it, the island wasn't colonized immediately. Then came the French colonization. The settlers came in 1635 from the Campagne des L'Amérique, and they arrived and established a colony at that time. The indigenous Carib population resisted this colonization, but eventually they were decimated by war and some diseases that was brought over by the Europeans. So then bring over all them foolishness over Martinique and kill off the people. Then there was slavery and the sugar economy. By the 17th century, Martinique had developed a plantation economy based on sugar, coffee, and later rum. And this economy later heavily relied on the African slaves who were brought over to the island under brutal conditions. Then in 1802, slavery was first abolished in 1794, but in 1802, it was reinstated by Napoleon. It was permanently abolished in 1848, following a widespread resistance and revolt by the enslaved population. After the abolition of slavery, Martinique saw an influx of indentured laborers from India. You see this trending in Martinique and in Guyana, these indentured laborers. And the island underwent significant modernization and became a French department in 1946, gaining the same political status as the mainland France. And today, Martinique is a vibrant blend of Caribbean culture. It remains an integral part of France, and it enjoys the same rights and representation as any other French region, while preserving its unique Creole heritage. I'll have Jelaine talk more about Martinique, what obtains in that country today.
It's quite interesting. Just before Jelaine speaks, it's quite interesting that as the various group present and talk about what happened to the Carib people or the Tainos or Arawakan people, it's quite interesting that, I mean, it's quite interesting when you read history. Who is writing the history? Can you trust the history that is written by these people? One. Two, how is it that all of the Carib people, the indigenous Carib people, died off because of diseases? The Europeans didn't die. How come the Europeans didn't die off from diseases?
Agree. Thought about.
No, how is it? No, right now I'm saying that every time I listen to this, I'm hearing, oh, they all died out from diseases. They all died out from diseases, but the Europeans didn't die from diseases. That is something I want to know more. I mean, I would have to do some research about. Yes, I want to check that something is wrong there. What happened to the Europeans and these? What kind of diseases? And is it that the Europeans were vaccinated but they never vaccination wasn't as it was today? Okay, unless the Europeans had developed some immunity to what they had and the Arawakan tribe or Carib people didn't, but it's quite interesting. And over time, these Arawakan didn't develop an immunity unless, whoever is telling the story wants to showcase the exceptionality of one group over another. One. But anyways, go ahead, Jelaine.
All right, good night, everyone. So I'm going to be sharing about the current position of Martinique. One of the things that we can effectively say is that it continues to add to the rich intellectual culture of the Caribbean, and that is as a result of writings by persons like Aimé Césaire and Frantz Fanon. We hear Sir talk about Frantz Fanon all the time, and you'll hear some more about that later on in the presentation. All right, so I've mentioned earlier that Martinique is connected to the French. So as a part of the French department, they have unique political benefits, so to speak, and that includes things like funds for developmental projects, which can have some sort of positive spillover effects in the region. The political landscape includes local branches of French political parties, such as La République en Marche, Les Républicains, and the Socialist Party. Some parties and movements advocate for greater autonomy or even independence from France, such as the Mauritian Independence Movement and the Mauritian Progressive Party. When we talk about addressing social issues such as unemployment, youth engagement, and social inequality, these things continue to remain a priority for Martinique. Balancing its French identity and its Caribbean roots is an ongoing challenge for Martinique, and they seek to strengthen regional integration while maintaining the unique identity that is crucial for its future. Right? So Martinique we look at its agriculture, and they have bananas and sugarcane and tourism, which are long-standing pillars of its economy, complemented by food processing, rum distillation, and petroleum refining. They have significant investments in like solar, wind, and geothermal projects aimed to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and promote sustainability. The development of technology parks and incubators to foster startups and improve digital infrastructure is also a part of what is currently happening in Martinique. And there is emphasis on sustainable fishing, marine conservation, modern farming techniques, and agrotourism. When we looked at what was happening in Martinique post pandemic, we recognized that the expected GDP growth of 3 to 4% was driven by tourism primarily, renewable energy investments, and alignment with sustainable development goals. I'll have my colleague continue with the demography of Martinique.
Yes, sir. So according to INSEE and the World Population Review, Martinique has an estimated population of the number that we're seeing there. Not very good with numbers. And this was as of the 1st of January 2022. And life expectancy at birth is 78.9 years for males and 84.8 for females. African Martinians and African Martiniqueans, getting that wrong, and African white Indian mixture is 80%. And then you have the Inter-Martiniqueans, which is 10%. And you have the white Martiniqueans, which is 5%. And then you also have the Lebanese, Jewish, Syrians, and Chinese Martinians, which comprise of less than 5% of the entire population. It is also important to note that the French government forbids ethnic censuses, and those numbers are not official and may not be in the numbers that we just mentioned just now. So this is, in a sense, a rough combination or rough breakdown of the different groups that are there based on this. And then French is also the official language and is understood by majority of the population. You also have the Martinian Creole, a form of Antillean Creole, which is also spoken by most of the population as well. Thank you.
In terms of Martinique's religion, Avril spoke to the French colonizers coming in 1635, and they introduced Roman Catholicism, which remains as the dominant religion in Martinique today. Before the colonization, though, the Carib people practiced animism, worshiping natural spirits and ancestors. French colonization established Roman Catholicism as the dominant religion, significantly influencing Martinique's culture and social landscape. The island's Catholicism is interwoven with African spiritual practices, reflecting the region's history of forced migration and cultural blending. And that is important to note because, of course, as we have noted here, this is a forced way of migrating them from the original religion, which was more in terms of anicism, into the cultural practices, the religious practices that are more European in terms of Roman Catholicism.
Very good. I'm happy that you are talking about that, and very good point you made, Julaine. Absolutely powerful point. I get to that later.
Listen to me. As my colleagues went through their slides, as I listened to Kenyatta speak about not being able the French government forbids ethnic censuses, but they were,
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to put. I was very.
I mean,
thank you.
The
Yes,
white
I saw that.
The Lebanese, the Jewish, the white Martinicans, the Indo-Martinique case, but we can't do the ethnic censuses. I really just wanted to bring that up, to just bring it to the forefront of our minds so we can really think of what is going on in some of these countries, or what went on in some of these countries, because key figures like Frantz Fanon, and if you have been a part of this class, you know how Sir absolutely loves Frantz Fanon and the work he
That
done.
is my guy.
Listen, if you would have heard this name quite a number of times, right? And Frantz Fanon was a psychiatrist and a philosopher. And he studied in France and later worked in Algeria during the Algerian War of Independence. Two of his major works at France is Black Skin, White Mask. I've read that book. And this book explores the psychological effects of colonization on Black people. When you think about the people that wear bleach, the psychological effects of colonization on Black people, particularly in terms of identity and self-perception. This is an awesome work from Fanon. And he examines how colonialism creates a sense of inferiority and alienation amongst the colonized. And then The Wretched of the Earth that he wrote in 1961, this was written during the Algerian War. And this work addresses the dehumanizing effects of colonization and the path to liberation. Now, listen, when I read this part, Fanon advocates for violent resistance as a means of reclaiming humanity and dignity. I thought about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm like, okay, he was like, okay, let's do it peaceful, let's hold hands, let's walk. But Fanon said, no. By any means, we are going for reclaiming our humanity and dignity, and we have to take it by force, we're going to take it by force. All right? So what is relevant about the work that Fanon has done? Because it's not only relevant to Martinique, it's relevant to the Caribbean, it's relevant to Black people. You hear Sir talk about, he looks at things from the subaltern perspective. He's a Black man, right? So the impact that his work has had on Caribbean thought. Fanon's ideas have greatly influenced post-colonial studies, critical race theory, and liberal movements worldwide. Now, in the Caribbean context, his work provides a crucial outline for understanding the legacy of colonialism and the ongoing struggles for identity and autonomy, because we still have people who do not understand who they are, do not understand their past, so they can't understand the future. So his work is still relevant today. How is it relevant to our cultural identity? His analysis of the psychological impact of colonization is particularly relevant to us in the Caribbean because the effects of colonial history are deeply felt. It's ingrained in social and political spheres. Even the browning, same Black people, one lighter than the other. That is like a grandchild of racism, right? When somebody browning, you feel to them better. When somebody live uptown and you feel to them better. So his work is very, very important as it relates to cultural identity in the Caribbean. Then decolonization. Fanon's advocacy for decolonization resonates deeply within the Caribbean experience because many nations fought for gain independence in the mid-20th century, but still have some form of tentacles coming from our colonizers, like Jamaica, who we still have to go to the Britain to get certain rules, got to get certain things passed, right? So his work is really, really relevant during decolonization. And when you think of race and identity, his study of race and identity offers valuable insights in the dynamics of racial relations in the Caribbean. Our region is marked by its diverse ethnic composition, yet somehow we have a problem with understanding who we are. So Fanon's work is very, very, very important to race and identity. Listen, team, Martinique and Guyana, they offer a compelling narrative of the Caribbean socioeconomic landscape from a subaltern perspective. Martinique, deeply rooted in its colonial ties to France, they balance this rich cultural heritage and an economy that is heavily reliant on agriculture and tourism. And conversely, Guyana's rich and natural resources, them oil, they have that, but they grapple with the complexity of rapidly changing their economy. So both regions encounter this distinct challenge and opportunities as they chart their futures. So when we reflect on these perspectives, I know 15 minutes didn't give us, all the deep delve that we'd love to have, but when we reflect on these perspectives, it becomes evident that understanding the socioeconomic dynamics of these areas provide critical insights into the resilience, the adaptation, and the struggle for progress within the globalized context. We thank you for your attention, and we hope that our presentation really enriched your understanding of the realities of Martinique and Guyana.
That's a clap for your group and the group earlier. And also last week, great. I'm very impressed. You guys did an outstanding job. In fact, all week last week. I mean, all week this week. Yesterday, button my shirt is not buttoned properly, probably. But I mean, yesterday and sorry, Monday and today. Great. Sorry, yesterday and today I was talking with some of my friends here, telling them how I'm just so impressed. You guys did such a great job with this particular activity. If we were to end class, you would all get A's for the course. I'm being honest. So far, I like what I'm seeing. You guys, I still don't know everyone in the class, but I like the participation. I like the involvement. I like how you guys are sharing information and you're reading widely and so on and so forth. That is so good. I am so impressed with the work that you guys did. Great job. Continue doing great. Okay. But one point I wanted to make, you guys talk about how the French, well, how religion is forced upon us, on people. Forced religion and the religion as a knowledge base, as an institution that helps to maintain a particular currency of knowledge so as to create a character, okay, create an identity in the mold of the former masters. We talk about this, our schools have inherited French, British, American, English education, which continues to socialize us in such a way that embrace European as the ideal and continue to what Fanon talks about, the depersonalization of self, which includes our heritage, continues to neglect and to reject that. This education system rejects any education that is not European up to today, in the way how we, in terms of the laws, the very laws that we have comes from our colonization, and we still hold on to some of those laws today, the same laws that reject Obia. And by the way, it's good to know that St. Lucia and Grenada have Obia. You saw that, almost across the Caribbean islands, they talk about Obia or some synchron, Santeria, or some kind of or appealing to the ancestral spirits, so forth and so forth. But they reject. In Jamaica, it's illegal. In Martinique and some other Caribbean islands, African spirituality is illegal, or the practice of it is not accepted, or you're looked down upon as weird. Okay.
And St.
It's
Lucia as well.
And St. Lucia, yes. Thank you for Nivea. And of course, so the very same laws. Next thing, the institutions, not just the institutions that we have, not just the church, not just the school, but in terms of work, workplaces, these organizations, they also operate within the capitalist or Western mold and continue to reject anything that was created by us, and the culture. But you look at how, until you question, I mean, are we really independent if we have inherited laws and institutions and cultures and schools and religion that continue And I always ask when the African sailors came here, what what happened to the documents? Where are all those documents? Some of those, some people didn't do a lot of writing. Some Africans didn't like to write, I guess. I don't know. And some of the histories were wiped out, were destroyed. Okay, so that they can preserve their own history. Okay, that's what's part of colonization, to destroy any history, any information that goes against what European influence. And that is why I say doing this course is important. Doing critical thinking is important. Being skeptic, being careful about accepting any truth and that is inherited. Even your own truth, even your own truth, you have to really start now. Let's revisit it. Let's think about it. If you want to study developmental psychology, there was one state, I don't know, I don't remember the psychologist, but the parent ego state, where when you get to 14 or so on, you start to move away from what your parents teach you and so on, to now start thinking about things yourself. Children go through that stage where they fight with the parents, and the children fight with their independence because the parents want to impose say, for example, when I was growing up, my parents used to force my brother, you have to go to church, you have to go to Sunday school. Okay. As a way to continue that kind of tradition. So, the Europeans did their work and left, but they are still here. Okay. But anyways, great job, guys. We'll pick up next week, Monday. We'll be back to ask some questions, maybe have some discussion, look at maybe one or two other islands that we haven't looked at. And also, I'm going to send you a document that we can discuss. It's called Tracing the Caribbean History. It traces Caribbean history from before Columbus to now. Yes, Nivea. That's good. That's good. Yeah, this is what we do. And that is why we do this course. And I really appreciate JTS for teaching a course like this that really helps us to think critically. And I said, somebody asked me, do you believe in Jesus? Are you a Christian? I said, yes, I believe in Jesus. Yes, I'm a Christian. And I wear my religion, and I go to church, and I practice my salvation with my chest puffed out. But then I said to people, but I understand that the religion we have has been tainted and influenced by men. So I am very careful about imposing what men have tainted. Okay? I said Christianity is the lens I use to connect with God and the world. Okay? But I understand that some of it involves a lot of European influence. Okay? A lot of human egos. It is a lot of it. Okay? But we can talk some more about that. Thank you, guys. Great. Any question before any quick thought? I want to finish the class as quickly as possible because you guys didn't get any break and we went straight through. The plan was to finish at 8 or 8:30 my time. Wait, hold on. Oh, we're supposed to finish at 10 my time, 9 your time. It's 8:30 in Jamaica. So the plan was to go from 6
Yes,
to
sir. Please
7.
don't get it confused, sir.
30. Oh yeah, yes. So,
It's to finish at night,
but we're gonna finish now. Watch the video, guys. We have the video, and now hopefully I can do this one and the one before this weekend. Have videos to upload, and I'm usually okay. But I'm gonna try and do this as quickly as possible. But thank you, guys. Great job. All A's. Maybe one or two groups we get maybe an extra credit for an exceptional job. I mean, because all of you get A pluses, but some group, they went above and beyond. And I just appreciate, whatever. You guys all get A pluses, but
Thank
one
you,
or two
sir.
of you groups, I am impressed. Very good job. Very good job. All right, now, okay. See you later, guys. See you on Monday. And if you guys need to talk to me, just send me an email and or talk to Kimori and she'll follow up with me and I'll see you. Take care and walk good.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night at the repast.
Yes, I am late.